Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Wisdom in Christ podcast. Today is episode 18, and I am here with my good friend and fellow brother, Calvin Richens, and we're going to be talking a little bit about masonry and Chios energy healing today, and maybe a little bit about how we met each other, and just kind of talking about some of those things, so it should be fun. So Calvin, you and I have been friends for quite a few years now. I think we met either in 2020 or 2021.
Somewhere
around there.
I don't know.
Yeah, so we've been friends for a minute now, and we've had a lot of good times together. But one of my favorite things that you've kind of shown me and taught me, and something that I'm learning to implement a little bit more, is Chios energy healing. So kind of like how do you feel about Chios energy healing and how it can have a positive impact on people and help them heal from different things?
Well, most of the people that I work on tell me that it's stronger than Reiki. I don't know if that's because of the way I use it. The one thing I want to say is that I don't do any of the healing. The universe does that. That there's energy out there, and you just give it a little direction, and it takes care of it for you. I don't take any credit. And you'll hear me say I did this or I did that, but really, it was Source that did it, not me. So what got you into it? How did you first get introduced to Chios? Well, I'd been doing a lot of studying with friends about automatic writing, channeling, and in the course of that, a lot of healing came up. And the guides they were using told me that I needed to do that because I had that ability. And I can remember some of the first things we did that just blew me away. I spent a lot of years fighting the fact that I could even do it. So I was looking for a modality that I could use without having to spend a lot of money or a whole lot of time. And I found Chios online and went through the guy that actually developed it, Steve Barrett out of California. And he sent me the materials, and I studied and worked with some people and did some work on people. And then he talked to me and talked through it. And each time he'd give me an attunement. And finally I got the master's. And so it's a master teacher is what they call you when you finish your Chios training. And so that's what your job is to teach people about it. It's not, you're not holding on to it. It's to be shared with everybody.
Right. And I've taken a couple lessons from you and learned a little bit. I still have a lot to learn. I'm like super, super basic, and I need to do some more healing on other people. I've done it a couple times, but I need to practice more directly on people. But so what are some of the things that you've seen in your journey with Chios, like things that you've seen people be healed from, or like what are some examples of?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start on that. There's been so many. I think I told you about working with the gal in England, doing a distance. I had a friend that had served an LDS mission over in Wales, actually. And she'd contacted him and asked him to pray for her because she had problems, and didn't give him any real information, but she was going to go to the doctors and they were going to do a surgery. And so he asked me to go to work on her, and I did. And what was really wild is I could see the place where she was. And it looked like an old, something out of Charles Dickens, Victorian, little square windows, gas lamps out on the sidewalks, just all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, you're just making this up. This can't be real, But I could see her laying there in the bed, and her body was kind of like a fluorescent light, but there was a dark spot. And so I just went ahead and sent the energy to that. And it took, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes to get that dark spot gone to where her whole body was light. And then I drew a picture of what I saw and gave it to one of my friends and said, put this away, and I don't want to see it until we hear from her. Because I thought, this is going to just prove me wrong. And anyway, he got a call from her, and went to the hospital, they'd run tests, and there was nothing there anymore. But she had a cyst on her ovary, which was exactly where I drew the dot, the dark spot, and it was gone. There was no reason to do the surgery. They couldn't explain it because the day before she had ovarian cancer. And I'm thinking, well, that's really cool, but what about all this place I saw? So he wrote and asked her, and she sent back with some information on it. Said it was the neatest place they had. It was like an old Victorian hospital with the cool little old pane glass windows and gas lamps on the walks. And I'm going, oh my gosh, yeah, I was actually there. But that's the kind of things you can do with energy and spirit. And something I've also learned about that kind of work is you have to kind of take it and make it your own. Yeah. I mean, Chios has a set pattern to do healing with. There's a book over there on the couch that's 2.5 inches thick of how to do stuff. But I've found that if you just listen and watch, you'll be shown what to do without a lot of steps. And that's the other cool thing about Chios is it's something akin to Reiki, but you don't have to learn 70 symbols or words. There are 5 symbols in the whole setup, and I don't know. It just works really well. I had a gal come and I worked on her, and she was having some problems. I don't even remember what. But she says, I've had these people work on me, and I can feel the energy, but it really hasn't completely helped. But she said, you're like a D8 cat when you put your hands on my shoulders or my head. She said it just flows through like crazy. So, and possibly some of that has to do, my great grandfather was a healer in our valley here. He people would call him, and he'd come over and do whatever he thought needed done and heal them. And so maybe I inherited some of that, but I really think it's mainly that spirit does it, and you just have to point it in the right direction, and it'll say, okay, yeah, I got it, go.
Yeah. So, okay. So what do you feel like? Do you feel like you've always known that you had some capacity for these things inside of you? Like, what was your experience from a young age? And
yeah, I've had experiences like that even as a kid, being able to know what was wrong with people and kind of send out whatever. I didn't know what I was doing, but it worked. I remember being a missionary in Indiana, and a gal that we were living in, renting from her an apartment for her in a house. And her dad was in the hospital, hooked up to all these tubes, and they thought he might last maybe 3 days. And she asked us if we'd give him a blessing. Well, he was a Catholic, so I said, ask him if that's all right. And he said, oh, anything, yes. And we went over there. And my companion, he was scared of it. He said, I'll just do the oil, you do the blessing. And I said, okay. So I did. And when we walked out of there, he said, why did you say that? Did you hear? You told him that he would be healed and walk out of that hospital in a very short time. And actually, it was, I think, 2 days before all the tubes were gone, and he was up and ambulatory.
Wow.
But he said, how could you make a promise like that? And I said, I didn't. It's what came into my head, and that's what came out.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things that from way back when. And I just have always had that. It's a connection with nature, I guess. That's where I feel the best, is when I'm out in the trees or rocks, or and I can feel that coming around me. And I just say, I don't know how many times I've looked at a storm when I've been driving down the road and thought, God is the greatest artist that there ever was. Look at this, and that's just kind of how I always was. So.
Yep, I agree 100%. God is the greatest artist that there ever was. So what about the energy? You said you could feel it and stuff even from a young age. Did you notice feeling the energy?
Oh, yeah. Even when I was a little kid, I remember aunts and uncles that were sick, and I could walk over and just put my hand on their knee or take their hand, and they'd sometimes cry and say, I feel so much better. And I didn't know what was going on. I could just feel it flowing through. So, and it was just natural. I never really questioned it,
right,
other than thinking this is impossible,
right,
but it just happened. It just was the thing that I knew I had to do.
So when you actually started learning Chios energy healing, what did the process look like? You said you'd actually taken from Stephen?
Yeah.
And
he developed a whole system that it's really kind of amazing, the things that he's developed for different kinds of sicknesses. Like, there's a whole section in the books on treating different kinds of cancer, heart disease, on and on like that. And I just wanted to have a certificate so people would listen to what I was saying. Instead of just saying, let me heal you, I could say, I got a thing on the wall that says I'm a master teacher at this
right,
thing. And so that's why I went into it. But when he would work on me, he was in California. I'm sitting here in Utah, and I could feel the energy moving, feel his contact, and I just felt really good about the guy. And I thought, well, I can learn from him, and I really did. So.
Yeah, I just got his book in the mail again yesterday because I had a copy of it and somehow left it at the local library a couple of years ago. But I got a copy, and if you just look at his face on the back, because there's a picture of him, he's got the most sincere smile. He just looks like a good, happy guy. And
yeah,
I feel good about him too, even though I've never talked to him or anything, So so that's really cool. I think Chios is something that has a lot of potential for helping a lot of people, and it's a pretty cool thing. And I want to learn more, and I'm glad I got that book.
Yeah. And the thing about it, I've taught quite a few people, certified them, and if you're open to it, you can see what's going on in their body. And I think, right from that first, I just saw a light. But I remember one of the other ones that I did was a little girl. I had a friend, and her granddaughter was in Florida, and she asked me if I could help her. And she said her intestines were knotted up, and they planned to go in the next day and cut out 6 feet of her intestines because there was no way to release those. And I could see it. And when I saw the little girl, she was in so much pain. You could just see the grimace on her face, Felt so bad for her, but I could see what was going on and actually just kind of just let the energy hit and nudge. And I probably worked a half an hour getting that untied. And when I was done, she smiled, and it was like she knew I was there. She looked right at me and had a beaming smile. And so I called the gal that had asked me to work on her grandmother and said, call your daughter. I said, I think we got this done. And she did. And she said she just was feeling great. And she'd been bound up, couldn't pass anything for weeks. And it would have killed her if they thought they had to cut it out. But we just untangled that, and it started to flow. And the next day she went to the doctor, and he just couldn't understand how that had undone itself. And she told him, but doctors kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
They're not trained in that area. And so it's kind of, right now there's kind of, at least in some cases, there's a separation between like the modern medicine and then some of these more spiritual ways of healing. But I think maybe eventually, hopefully, they'll kind of come together and reconcile each other.
Oh, they already are. There's a lot of hospitals in big cities that have people there, Reiki people, that's what they do, or they have, can't think of the term. It's people that can see inside the body, and they tell them where to look for problems. And they'll talk to the patient and teach them to meditate and calm down. And they're finding all kinds of really good. So they keep people like that on staff now in some big hospitals, where before they would have kicked them out and probably sent them to jail.
Yeah. I mean, even just a couple 100 years ago, this kind of stuff was just completely rejected by people, unless it was like select small groups of people that knew.
There were a lot of groups of people that were spiritual and accepted it and expected it. But there were a lot of other people that were stodgy, I guess, and they could not accept anything that wasn't right in front of them and that was proven and on and on. And so they just miss it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of have to be willing to believe in something more than just, material reality in a way.
And I found with people that I've worked with is if they have even a little bit of belief that it will happen, it will. But if they don't believe it, you can fix them, and in 2 or 3 days they're sick again. And I've even told some, I'm sorry, but until you're ready to let go of this and quit crying to your family about how sick you are because you like that feedback, I can't help you. I can fix you for a day or two, but nothing's going to stick until you let it stick. And it's been true. And I've had people that have kind of changed their way of thinking and been able to help them, and others that just died, got sick and died.
So what do you think that is? Do you think it's because there are certain things that are leading to the sickness that they're not willing to like let go of?
Yeah, almost all sickness is emotional. It comes from stress. It comes from sadness. It comes from, almost all of it comes from that. And so once somebody can release that, they get better fast. But I mean, really fast. But as long as they're stuck in that, I'm ill and I hurt and it's hard to get out of that. But when you work on somebody and they feel a relief, most of them accept it and just go, wow, thank you so much. And I'm going, no, I didn't do this, but there you are.
No, that's really cool, Calvin. I think that's awesome. So I had this thing happen recently where I was doing there's like a tournament for wrestling and a tournament for basketball, and you fill out like what teams you think are going to win. And I only did the wrestling one because there was like a paper to fill out what teams for the basketball teams, and it just seemed too tedious to fill out two full pages. But anyway, so I fill out this full page of teams for the wrestling team to see who was going to win. And basically, I was just kind of intuitively putting the names of the teams down. Well, I found out like a couple days later that I had won and I'd gotten 100% on what teams were going to win. So how do you feel about like intuitive inspiration on things like that? Do you believe in that? Like, what do you think,
That's the way spirit works. When you can just let it happen, it's amazing what will come to pass. It's just like when I'm working on somebody and the minute they walk in the room, I can tell kind of what's wrong. But then I go in and look, and at first I used to question every time, you can't see this, nobody can see this. But once I was able to accept that, it's really easy to fix things because you just trust it. There it is, Spirit will take care of it. I'll let that blue light or whatever go in there and take care of it, and it does. And it's the same thing with life. If you live in dread, you're going to be miserable. And if you live in faith, I guess is the best word. But if you start learning to look at the brighter side and be happy, things just fall into place.
Yep. Yeah, they do. So there's a certain element of trust that God really tends to reward with blessings and with peace. And yeah, I think that's really true. So, okay, so how did you get into masonry? Because you and I are both Masons. That's why I called you my fellow brother at the start of the podcast, right? So
yeah. Well, I showed Dallin the other day. We went over to the next town over Roosevelt, and we were driving through, and I said, that was the old Masonic Lodge. And he goes, oh, really? But when I was a kid, I walked by that on the way to school every day, and it was so mysterious. All the windows were blocked off. And I wanted to know what went on in there, but there was no way to do it. And for all my life, I thought that they had to ask you to become a member. And I went, when I was in Indianapolis, I got a chance to tour the Scottish Rite Cathedral there, which is a gorgeous building. And I just thought it was great. And I wanted to be part of it, but I was still waiting for somebody to ask me. And then I do custom engraving and artwork, and I was doing a fair here in town. And a gal came up to me, and I'd taken a picture out at the Salt Lake Masonic Temple of the Sphinxes they have out front. And I'd put it on a box. And she says, I know what this is. Are you a Mason? And I said, no. She said, well, how come you got this picture? I said, I just thought it was really cool. And anyway, she said, well, my husband's a Mason. I'll send him over. And he came over, and we started to talk. And he said, I said, how do you get to be a Mason? And he says, well, you already started. You just have to ask. And so within probably a week, I was started in and got the investigation done. And I think it was about 2 weeks before I got my first degree.
Wow.
I was pretty sick at the time. I've had a lot of heart problems and silly things. And I've always resisted working on myself. And just as a side here, I had to have a toe amputated, and I had a massive infection. And so I decided, well, I'm going to do it. So I went to work on my foot, and there was a hole all the way through that they would pass a stick through literally when they were cleaning it up. And they were going to get a wound vac to put on my foot, and they ordered it, got it here. And by the time it got here, it had already healed up to where there wasn't any room to put the wound vac in. And the doctor and all of his nurses were just going, this is amazing. I've never seen a wound heal like this. And I tried to tell him what I'd done, and it's like his ears went off.
Yeah.
And the nurses were going, hey, that's cool. Tell me more. But
the nurses were more off.
He just had an off switch in his head and didn't hear it. But he still, right to the end, he said, I can't believe how fast you healed this up. I don't understand it. So
it's really cool.
And I don't remember where I was when we started into that.
I think you were going to talk about how you got the first 2 degrees and then the third one, and you were kind of...
Well, I was sick, and I wanted to do Scottish Rite, which is like an aside from Masonry. It's actually where the other degrees of the 33 come into play, but it's not. As a Master Mason, the 3rd degree is as high as you can get in Masonry. The rest is just additional knowledge and more cool things. And I wanted to do that. And so I worked really hard at the memorization and got it all done in time to go to the reunion that fall. And got up to my 32nd degree there. And it was just a really cool experience. That temple in Salt Lake is beautiful, and the degrees are like little plays that they do. But it's just kind of spectacular. And I got it done. But I was worried, and I talked to the secretary of the lodge. said, if I don't make it, because I really wondered if I was going to die. I said, if I don't make it, can I still have a Masonic funeral? Because I didn't have all my degrees. And he said, brother, I'll make sure that it happens, but you're going to make it. So I did. And it's been kind of a fun ride.
So how do you feel like Masonry has impacted you as a person?
I've just met a lot of really good men, and not all Masons are really good men. Some of them I don't want to have a lot to do with, but that's between me and them. But most of them, they're there to help you. They're there to help other people. They help all kinds of charities. Our Scottish Rite does what they call right care, and they work with kids who have speech impediments. And they've actually been able to do in less than a year what the school system can't do in 4 or 5 years. They bring people in, the families. They work with the parents, with the kid. They don't just pull the kid aside. They work with them. And it's all provided for by donations from Masons, so there's no charge. And then also, the Shrine has the Shrine Hospital, and it's for kids with all kinds of disabilities. So they pay for braces, they pay for surgeries, they pay for all kinds of things to help those kids. And I just think it's great. And there's a lot of other things that we do. Our lodge in particular works with Special Olympics and helps those guys go and compete and have fun and sponsors their activities. So, but it helps you be part of the community more. And just like I say, a lot of good people to associate with. When I go to lodge, I come away feeling good. In fact, it's kind of a pain because I have a hard time getting to sleep because I'm kind of excited.
Goodness.
But yeah, that's some of the impacts on my life. And you learn a lot of information. You can get everything you want out of it, or as little as you want out of it. For some people, it's just a fraternity, and they're just there to socialize and make connections and whatever. But if you start learning what the degrees teach, you can study all kinds of topics and just learn so much about everything, about creation, about God, about the great architect that built this whole thing, and how it came to be. Or you can, like say, go over and eat dinner and go home.
Yep. It's kind of up to the person what they get out of it, isn't it? So what about the impact Masonry has had on your heart?
It gives me a reason to feel good about what I'm doing, that I'm in kind of the right place, doing the right thing. And like say, most of the guys are just fantastic, and you feel good being around them. So
yeah,
makes you a better person.
Yep, I've experienced that as well. I felt those same things. So okay, cool. So what about the symbols of Masonry? Like, do you have a favorite degree? Like what are some of your favorite symbols?
Well, I'm a little weird. Everybody likes the master's degree, but I always like the fellowcraft, which is a second degree, because it has so much built into it. The symbolism, it teaches you what you're there to learn. Can't go into a lot of detail on that because it's part of the degree and part of the obligation. So, but it's, to me, that was the neatest degree. And the Master Mason is really, really cool, but it didn't hit me near as hard as the fellowcraft did. But that's just my personal experience. And as far as the symbols, you see them everywhere around you, and you start to realize that that's how things are put together. The geometry and the square and the compasses are used in all building everything. Draftsmen still use them. It may be computerized, but they still use them.
Yep.
And I've seen evidence that Masons have been around for a long, long time. You find some of the tools inscribed on buildings in South America and in Egypt and places like that, even though, according to the history books and stuff, it's been in existence for 300 years. It's been a little longer than that. And it's kind of neat to be a part of a group that's been around that long.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really cool. So what do you feel like advice you'd give to somebody that's interested in masonry, wants to join? What would you say to a newcomer?
Just find somebody who's a mason and ask them. Go to the lodge, meet some of the guys, see how it feels to you. If it feels good, join. And I would say, don't go in just because it's a fraternity. It's not just a club. You can learn so much from some of those older masons and even some of the newer ones. We've got some in our lodge that are just plain geniuses. And it's really cool to talk with them and philosophize with them. But go into it to improve yourself. Don't go into it just to have a club to go to once a month or however often your lodge meets. So,
yeah, I'd say that's good advice. How about for the degrees? What would you tell somebody going into the degrees? Like, what kind of mindset or?
Well, you don't know what's going to hit you when you go in.
That's true. It definitely took me by surprise.
But it's just, once you start to think about it, it's just really amazing how much is taught just in those 3 degrees. It takes probably a little over an hour to do the first one. The next one's a little bit longer. Master's degree's probably a good 2 hours to get through that. But every time you see those degrees or participate in helping a brother be added to the list, you learn more. You go, I didn't realize that was there. Look at that. There's just a lot of information. And if you're willing to listen, you'll get it. And if you're not, it'll go right over your head. So,
I think that's good advice, Calvin. So, okay, cool. So you read a lot of books, you've read a lot of books throughout your life. So what are some of the most impactful books that you've read?
I've read a lot of books. I spent a lot of my younger years reading stuff like the Think and Grow Rich and The Greatest Salesman, and how to win friends and influence people. And it really helped me in the work that I did, because every job I ever had, I went right up to management. Within a year, I was in management. And all the people around me were complaining about the boss and how mean he was, or what a, snobby person they were. And most of the places I worked, the boss was my best friend, because I would talk to them and tell them how I would improve what they were doing or what I thought was right or wrong. And they appreciated it. But most people, they just want to keep their head down and go hide somewhere and get a paycheck. And then they'd be mad at me because I'm a brown nose because you got all the good jobs. Well, okay.
So
you got it. Oh, there.
Yes, we're rolling now. So
I was probably about 35 when I really got involved in fantasy books. As a kid, I read a lot of dime novels, Western things, same story, different names. But a friend of mine introduced me to The Lord of the Rings. He had a T-shirt on that said, Frodo lives. And I said, who the heck is Frodo? And so he loaned me the books to read, and I just devoured them. And then I ran on to David Eddings' The Belgariad, and those are some spectacular books. I've had people, I tell them not to get them unless they have time, because you won't sleep at night, you won't do anything. But that was fun. And then back when I was a missionary, my mission president, I was just blown away by it. But one of the required books was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. And I read it and I thought, man, this is weird. This talks about reincarnation and all this stuff. It's a little book, takes about an hour to read, but I really recommend it to anybody. I think it's a primer for life. It's really good. And then he has several others that are pretty much as good. There's a book called Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And it's just really cool. But you start learning from that. I decided to test some of the things he put in there, like dissolving clouds and stuff in the sky. And be danged if it didn't work. And then I remember reading, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Anyway, it's The Isaiah Effect, Greg Braden. And he has lots of books. And some of them I just really loved and some of them I didn't. But that was another one where I decided to test what he said. I was teaching a meditation class, and I was half hour away in Roosevelt, and realized it was 10 minutes till 7, and I was supposed to be there. And so he talked about going to the pyramids and getting there 2 hours early, and the guards for the bus being confused because they were looking at their watches, and we shouldn't be here yet. They were 2 hours early because everybody on the bus was excited and anticipating, and so it warped time a little bit. Anyway, I got my wife and kids loaded into the truck, and I refused to look at the clock. And I just headed out, and it's a 30-minute drive. And I dropped off the hill coming into Vernal at 5 to 7 and got there right on time. And it's one of those things where you go, this can't happen, but it did. Yeah. And several other things in his books. He has a thing about praying rain. And I remember doing that where he went out with a Native American friend, and they went to a prayer wheel, and he walked the circuit through it. And he said, okay, let's go. And he said, well, I thought you were going to pray for rain. And he said, no, I came to pray rain. What do you mean? He says, you have to accept that it's already happened. And he said, on the way back, we almost got stuck getting back to town because it was raining so hard. And the dry desert that hadn't seen rain for 2 years was a mud pool. So, I've done that a couple of times and been able to hold weather off. We went to a kind of a sacred place up here north of Vernal, and we're doing some things, and it clouded up and started to snow. And everybody says, you can do this, hold that back. And so I just put a dome around it and let it go. And we drove out, and when we got to the road, it was snowing like crazy, but there wasn't any snow in a circle around that area. And you can call them miracles, you can call them whatever, but I've just seen it happen time after time after time. And people will doubt, and they'll laugh and say you're full of crap, but I've seen it happen over and over.
Yeah. I think that, if you believe that something can happen, then I think people will be pretty surprised what they're capable of,
Yeah, well, that's what Jesus said in scriptures, greater things than I have done shall you do. So,
yeah.
Hey, who might argue with him?
I'm not going to, that's for sure.
But anyway, yeah, I don't know. They're just, if you're willing to accept it and play with it, life's full of miracles. And if you look at everything with dread, you're going to live a miserable life, and you're going to be sick the whole time. And it takes all the fun out of it. And I've watched so many people do both ends. And so I'd rather be the one that's laughing and smiling than the one that's pouting in a corner.
Yep, me too, Calvin. Me too. So what do you feel like people, if they're new to this stuff, like Chios or, working with the power of their mind, what advice do you have for people that are getting into this?
Well, you have to accept it, but I think at first you have to do like I did and say, this is bullshit. Nobody can do this. and it proves out that it really does happen. And then once you get past that, this can't be, it's almost limitless what's available to you. But that's a pretty good step for a lot of people. Most people are locked into their beliefs, and this is the system, and this is how everything works. And until you shake that loose and step aside, that's where you are. You're locked in it. But when you step aside, things start to happen, and it's just really cool. So,
Yeah. So, okay, cool. Well, I really enjoyed the stuff that we've talked about so far, and probably don't want to go too crazy long with it, but maybe just a couple more questions. So we talked about masonry, Chios energy healing a little bit, some of the things the power of the mind. How do you feel about, like, what's some of your favorite music?
I like all kinds of music. I really like, I sleep with healing music on at night because it helps me. But I like Three Dog Night and Creedence Clearwater and, Steppenwolf and that stuff from the 70s when I was a kid. But I like music that has a message. One of my favorite groups was Kansas, because every song they had told a story. And if you listen to the words, they'll give you chills. There's one line in one of the songs where he says, "Judge you not by what you see, more than you can count or hear with me." And that's another thing I've learned, is there are spirits and beings all around you that are willing to help. Lots of them, if you just open up. So that's what music, it has to have a meaning. It has to have something that touches me. I can't deal with the new music. The spitting and blowing and the swearing is not something that I want. But there's a lot of old country that was stupid that way, all about divorce and bars and blah, blah, blah. But some of it's beautiful,
Yeah.
So I listen to whatever I want right now. Over here, you can't see it on camera, but
We've got
probably, I'd say about 800 or 900 albums.
Yeah.
And they're everything from classical music to hard rock. It's all right there. And it's stuff I've listened to over the years and kept and enjoyed. So,
yeah. And your record player is a pretty nice setup.
Oh,
too,
yeah.
Calvin.
I lucked out on that one.
Yeah, you did, because it sounds nice with your surround sound system in it, and it's pretty fun to listen to those records with you. So you got some tuning forks and sound bowls behind you too. So
yeah,
do you use those at all in your work specifically?
I use the tuning forks occasionally. They're really subtle, so people can't hear them. So I pass them by the ears so that vibration gets, and then you set that on wherever the affected area is, and it'll change the vibration and clear it out. You brought some crystal bowls over here. We've got a couple of those right here on the table.
Yeah, we do.
And I've got some Tibetan bowls, and it's really neat how those can draw sickness or disease out of people, or just plain relax people.
Yeah.
These things are cheating, because most of the Tibetan bowls, you have to hit them just right. But these, anybody can play them.
Yeah.
But you can feel that energy inside of you when that tone is there.
Yep. Right away.
If I've got somebody who has problems, this one works up here, and I just get it going and let it work into them a little bit, and then I just let go and draw it away, and it'll take the energy with it, the bad energy with it, and just disperse it. So yeah, I use any tool that helps people. I've learned over time that you don't need any of the tools.
Right.
But they help the client. It helps them to accept what's going on or tune into it better.
Kind of almost like if they don't have quite enough faith maybe to do it just on their hand with just working with the energy, the tuning fork or the bowl kind of cues them into something that helps kind of build a little more faith for them.
And around here we have a lot of Native Americans. And so I had a friend that had eagle fans. She was native, and government confiscated them, destroyed them, and then brought them back to her. But I went to a trading post out in Salt Lake, and I got this fan, and that's a goose feather, rabbit, and the handle is a deer's ear, but it's so sensitive you can pass it down somebody's body and it will actually stick wherever they got a problem. And then you can just draw it away with the feather and dance it off into the world. It's really cool. But that's a tool that a lot of those people and people who associate with them, except people that are into mountain man stuff, they'll love this, but it helps them to heal themselves. It's not something I do or something that this does. It's something they accept and it'll work for them.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, you can feel it too. It's a really light.
It's just a really soft touch.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Yeah,
but the gal that taught me how to use it, she used to beat me half to death with those eagle feathers, pounding on my chest and saying, breathe, breathe. But she really helped me a lot.
That deer ear is really cool. Is that elk or deer? Is that little deer?
It's a deer, red deer.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool, Calvin.
And these kind of tools aren't expensive. I think this was $26. I was expecting to pay $150, and when I saw it on the shelf, I went, okay, I need that bad. And I've got some crystals that are really good. I've got a set of 3 that were gifted to me over the years, and it's really cool when you can hand those to people and they can put them between their fingers and feel a different vibration. And the biggest one, you have to hold it in your hand, and it has a vibration that's like a heartbeat. If once they close their eyes and relax, they can feel it pulsing. And so it works with that part of your system. And the higher ones work with other areas. And so I just hand them a crystal and talk to them and work on them a little bit. And they're focused on the crystal and think it's healing them, which it is to a point. But basically, it's just something to focus their mind on to do what they really want to do.
Yep, help anchor them to something.
Yeah.
That kind of helps with the healing process.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool, Calvin. I appreciate you taking your time to come on to the podcast today. And I've really had a lot of fun talking about this stuff with you. And maybe we'll have to do another one again, because this is pretty fun. And I think that there's a lot to learn, and a lot of this stuff is finally starting to be kind of accepted by people. And that's really exciting. And it's cool to be part of it. And I think that there's a bright future ahead, Calvin.
Yeah. When I first started doing this, probably 30 years or more ago, people were scared of it. They thought it was the devil for sure. And then you could help them and they'd go, wow, because it would just calm them completely. Their whole body would relax. But a lot of people wouldn't even have anything to do with it because they were terrified of it. And now, over in our little town, there's probably 4 New Age shops where you can buy crystals, get a massage, get a sauna, a rock treatment, whatever. So, and that's something else I use. I had a set of hot rocks that had a heater, but they were volcanic and they cooled off super fast. So I went out here in the hills, and there's a hillside over there that has these, and these are basically gizzard stones from dinosaurs.
Oh, really?
They're naturally polished. But they have, that one there has white in it, and it's really cool to watch it when you put it on somebody, and that will change color. It'll go dark, and it'll just draw the whatever out of them, and that white vein will go dark, and then you take it off, and it clears right back up.
Wow. That's amazing.
Not only that, but it's just super relaxing to have those on your back.
Yeah, they feel kind of peaceful too.
Yeah. And they've just been sitting out there on that hillside. It took me probably a half hour to find that many of those stones.
Yeah. No, yeah, you got all kinds of colors here, like kind of black ones, and more yellow
those work
ones.
Down, and colors can help. Like that kind of orangey one helps work with your spleen. Black ones work with your kidneys, but you heat them. I heat them up to 150 degrees, and then put a towel over the person and lay them on top of the towel so it doesn't burn them. And people it's so relaxing you can't hardly stand up when you're done.
I imagine it would be. And you do raindrop therapy too, don't you?
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, that one uses, I think, 13 oils. They're over there on the table. And you just, it's a whole process of feathering and working the oils in. But I've got one client that comes to me every month or two, but her spine was curved like that much up in between her shoulders. And we've got it almost straightened out. And then she has a big curve at the bottom. But she was in so much pain and doctors wanted to fuse it and she didn't want to do that. And so she came to me and we started working on it. And she went out to the VA to her doctor out there and he says, "What have you done?" And so she told him and he says, "Now, what was that? Dewdrop?" She said, "No, it's raindrop therapy." Well, I'm going to have to find somebody that does that. I'm going to check it out.
The doctor was about it this time.
Yeah, he decided that was pretty cool. And it's really helped her. And it's been there for so long that the bones are actually just deformed. I can see that. But we've been able to pull the tendons and the cartilage around it, so it pulls it back up and holds it straighter so she doesn't have all the pain. And it'll last her quite well. She still goes out, and she was about to give up her mountain man rendezvous and stuff because of the pain. And she goes out to every single one she can get to now. So
that's awesome, Calvin. Yeah, that's really cool. So my sister actually has scoliosis. That's the only reason I know about the term range up therapy is because somebody had told me or had told her about it. And then I found out because she had gotten a couple treatments. So apparently it's been really effective for her.
I just do it to help people relax. I don't really do it as a massage therapist or anything, but it really helps. In fact, it's even known to help with MS.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But it's one of those things, like when I do energy work, usually my goal is to get somebody healed. Sometimes they have to come back 2 or 3 times, but mostly it's one time. And with those kind of things, that's just going to be a regular treatment for the rest of this gal's life. But she's 76. So, who knows how long that'll be.
So, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to tell the audience? Anything you want to plug?
I don't think so. If you're in the area and need help, I can help you. If you're out of the area and you need help, give me a phone call and or an email or text, and we can do distance stuff. I've done a lot of that. So.
Cool. I'll put your email in the description of the video, and then that way people can reach out and maybe get your phone number over email if they want to.
Yeah, I've got access to a list of Chios masters. I don't know much about many of them. I've only met 2 or 3, but they were pretty good people, and so they can help you with a lot of this stuff too. And I can tell you if there's one near where you are.
Perfect.
If you'd rather do one-on-one.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Calvin. I appreciate you coming on today, and I appreciate you and our friendship. And we've had a lot of really good times together, and I think we're going to have more. And thank you for taking your time to come on the podcast. And for all the viewers, I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something today and found it valuable. And we'll put Calvin's email in the description box below if you guys want to reach out about anything we've talked about and ask him any questions. You can use the email in the description box below. And we appreciate you guys taking your time to tune in to today's podcast. And as always, peace be unto you.